What's good, y'all? It is Tuesday, December 16th. My name is Patrick, and this is The Morning Show. Oh, what is up, everyone? It is good to be back this week. I hope your weekends were everything you needed them to be. I hope your Monday was everything you needed it to be. And I am glad to be sitting here with you on this slightly warmer Tuesday. Going to talk about a couple things this morning. I want to kick off, though, talking about episode 7. Titled What Makes Someone a Good Friend. And that conversation was with my good friend, Stretch Thally. Shout out to everybody that has tuned in. Shout out to everybody who is new and who came over because of that episode. Appreciate y'all being here. I said it on Threads. I said it on a couple different places, but I do actually believe this, from my perspective, is maybe the best individual podcast episode I've ever done. And I think I say that because the conversation itself that Stretch and I had is exactly what I'm going for every time I have a conversation on a podcast. And I realize that obviously there are a lot of different variables that allowed for this to occur, including the fact that we know each other. But I say that because I just feel like when I am doing this particular style of work, especially when I am having a conversation with someone, that's what I'm trying to do. I am trying to not get away, but it's not meant to be an interview. It's meant to be just us sitting here talking, chopping it up. And I do feel like Stretch and I achieved that during our conversation. So shout out to him. If you're not already listening, go check out the Follow D Money podcast. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts. He is having some really great conversations, and I think the episode dropping this week is going to be a pretty good one. When that comes out, I will link it, but spoiler. Not really a spoiler. Teaser. All right, so that leads me into, though, what I wanted to talk about a little bit. The first thing is just a follow-up on the news of the week last week in regards to redistricting and the failed effort by Indiana Republicans to push through new maps that would disenfranchise a bunch of us Hoosiers here in Indiana for the sole purpose of attempting to empower one particular party in Washington, D.C. next year and potentially beyond. In a very short time since the Senate voted down these gerrymandered maps, there have been multiple threats of federal funding being withheld, multiple threats of primaries being funded and run against the Republicans who voted no on these maps in 2026 or come the election time. I did see from somewhere that most of the reps who voted no aren't up for re-election next year. So I'm not sure who they are primarying. Their own people, maybe. But I would say the discourse coming out of this, in addition to the threats, is just that there's a lot of scrambling happening. Indiana, in the eye of the national media, has kind of put their foot down in a different way than California has. California, traditionally a Democratic stronghold. Indiana, traditionally a Republican stronghold, a red state, that due to a lot of gerrymandering. Indiana just said no. And a lot of that had to do with the people, the constituents, Hoosiers, saying no. And that is why I wanted to kind of lead off today with just this quick follow up, because the big takeaway I think I've had, and that I want other people hopefully to just keep in their minds, whether it be in the front, the back, wherever it might exist, is that our voices are powerful. They carry power, and you would not fight so hard against the will of the people if you weren't afraid of losing or letting go of your power. And right now, I think Republicans are scared that we are hip to the game, not just Hoosiers, but everybody, and that the jig is up. And I think it's been up for a minute, but I think we are seeing now, especially people on the fence about supporting Trump or being Republican, Democrat, whatever, independent, whatever you want to call it. Like, we're seeing people realizing, okay, hey, everything that this administration was promising, affordability, lowered healthcare costs, all of these things, not true. Or at the very least, not at all prioritized. And that's what we were seeing reflected in this attempted mid-cycle redistricting effort. And I will say that Indiana won because of our voices. Again, they would not fight so hard to make something like this happen if they didn't think that we were going to rise up against it. And guess what? We rose and we stood against. Remember, as I said last week, a battle, not the war. I don't even know why that's the metaphor, but this is a moment. This is a small win along the timeline of competitions that are happening for humanity, I guess I'll say. And what we have proven is that we can affect change, or at the very least, can change the minds of the people that we have elected to serve us in the first place. And so I think that's something that I want hopefully to be carried forward out of 2025 into 2026, is the importance and the power of our voices when we rise up together, when we band together to fight for ourselves and for our people, and not just for a particular person or political party. So that's a good thing, I suppose, in the world, that our collective voices have shown us how much power that we hold, because the world is still it's a place where shit is happening, and not all the shit is good. Some of the shit is very bad. Over the past couple weeks, I feel like I've seen in the headlines a lot of shootings happening at schools. And over this past weekend, we saw 2 more mass shootings happen. One of them happened at Brown University, where 2 people were killed, 9 more injured. And then in Australia, at Bondi Beach in Sydney, 15 people were killed and at least 42 more injured, when 2 gunmen, a father and son team, opened fire on a group of Jewish folks who were celebrating Hanukkah, the start of Hanukkah, on the beach. Bondi is, I read or heard somewhere, one of Australia's most prominent or famous beaches. So the fact that this were to happen there just intensifies the spotlight. Not that it wasn't already as intense as it possibly could be. And I'm bringing these 2 things up because I've on Monday especially, I've seen this narrative of this is why we need guns. I've seen this narrative from people particularly in America, who believe that these two incidences here are the reasons why we should have guns. One of the things that I've seen said is that Australia, where the Bondi Beach massacre just took place, is a country who has some of the strongest or toughest gun laws out there, and it still happened. So if they didn't have such gun laws, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. However, a lot of people are saying that live in the U.S., who have maybe the loosest gun laws in the world, borderline no laws on guns. And so honestly, like, these two shootings stand in contrast because of their countries that they happened in. Because Australia hasn't had a mass shooting like this, I think, in 30 years is what I saw, where the U.S. has had multiple mass shootings for the past ever. And so as I was, checking out the discourse and seeing what people were saying, I wanted to look up some stuff. And so I pulled up, or I found an article on Forbes from that just came out. Headline: The gun murder rate in Australia, where 15 were slain at Bondi Beach, is 6,000% lower than in the U.S. This is an article by Zachary Folk, but I just want to read. They have a key facts part that leads off the article. I just want to read the 4 key facts highlighted here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. But all right, key fact number 1. There were almost 47,000 firearms-related deaths in the United States in 2023, the most recent year with available data from Pew Research Center, for an average rate of 13.7 deaths per 100,000 people. Of those, about 18,000 were gun-related homicides, for a rate of 5.6 gun murders per 100,000 people in 2023. During a comparable period, July 2023 through June 2024, Australia saw only 31 gun-related murders, a homicide rate of 0.09 gun murders per 100,000 people, according to data from the Australian Institute of Criminology. And finally, there have been 391 mass shootings verified in the U.S. in 2025 as of December 14th, according to the data from the Gun Violence Archive, while Australia recorded relatively few after passing gun control laws following the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. All right. So 2 numbers I want to hone on real quick. 5.6 gun murders per 100,000 people in 2023. 18,000 gun-related homicides in 2023 in the U.S. During a comparable period, Australia saw 31 gun-related murders, or 0.09 gun murders per 100,000 people. The headline really says it all. 6,000% lower. And yet, the loudest people online are talking about how if Australia just allowed people to carry guns willy-nilly, something like this wouldn't have happened. The facts don't back up the fiction. The facts lay out the reality. The facts show us that when you do not have meaningful gun legislation, when you do not restrict the ability to own tools of destruction, weapons that they use in actual war, if you do not regulate heavily the ability for people to own these things and utilize them in everyday life, then you're going to see 18,000 people die a year. 47,000 firearm-related deaths. Not even the homicides. That's not even the homicides. That's the 18,000 number. 47,000 firearm-related deaths in 2023. It just doesn't make sense to me. I grew up in a community that love their guns. I have friends that have guns. I've never been a fan of guns. And I think this argument that if we could just have the guns with no regulations, then none of this would happen, is just not backed up by the facts. And at the end of the day, I already wrote about it, but at the end of the day, what it says to me is that we would rather let people die than to give up the ability to own whatever firearm that we wanted to own without questions. We would rather let anybody die than to give up the ability to just own this firearm and do whatever we wanted with it. We would rather let people die. That's what that says to me. It's not about safety. It's not about protecting people. It's not about being pro-life. It's about, I want to carry this weapon, and I don't give a fuck who fucking dies, so I can have it. That's not your right, dude. That's your fucking opinion. I'm sorry. I'm fired up. I'm fired up. This is the morning show. But I'm fired up. It fucking sucks that we live in a country that is unwilling to look at itself. Actually, it's not even about it. It is about looking at yourself and saying, who are we really? Who do we want to be? Who do we want to be? And because the gun industry is lucrative, we choose to be the fucking shittiest people you could ever imagine. Because we would rather line our pockets with money, because the money that lines our pockets insulates us from the violence that's happening in our streets. And because we're insulated from the violence, we don't have to care. And because we don't care, we would rather let people die than give up the ability not to care. As fired up as I am about the win against redistricting, about Indiana maintaining its backbone and voting down these maps, shout out to the Senate, I am equally as fired up about our inability to fucking regulate guns in a way that kids don't die, in a way that people aren't just fucking shot because they went to church. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that this is continuing to happen. 391 times last year. They didn't even put a number next to Australia's because it hasn't happened that much. Since 1996, 30 years. It's ridiculous, dude. It's ridiculous. All right, I'm fired up. I will say that in the year 5000, when we look back on the history of the universe and we get to the chapter about America, triumph or failure, it will. I think one of the many things that's going to be talked about is going to be the ability to either figure out how to properly regulate our guns or not. It's going to be one of the major indicators of the success or failure of this nation. And to be honest, I am not confident. But I am encouraged because I was just a part of what could very well be a sea change happening here in Indiana. And when I say sea change, I just mean like from a national perspective. Because I think Hoosiers know what it is. And I think, yeah, we got a lot of work to do, and we do disagree on a lot of stuff. But I think, yeah, we know what it is. This is the morning show. If you haven't tapped into episode 7, which came out yesterday on Monday, go ahead and do so. Let us know what you think. Tell us what makes somebody a good friend from your perspective. Leave it in the chat. Leave it in the comments. Hit me up on Instagram. Hit me up on Threads at Patrick in the World. But yeah, appreciate y'all being here. It is Tuesday, December 16th. I hope you have a great Tuesday, and until tomorrow, see y'all soon.